He has not stopped thinking about you. That silence you're staring at right now, the one that feels like rejection, is actually the loudest sign that he is falling deeper than he knows how to handle. I need you to hear that clearly before anything else. He is not ignoring you. He is drowning in feelings he was never taught how to survive. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what is happening inside his mind during that silence, why the pulling away is not the ending you think it is, and what you need to do right now so you do not sabotage the very thing that is quietly building on the other side of his distance. Let's get into it. Here's the thing nobody explains to you about avoidant men. Distance is not the opposite of love for them. It is the symptom of love arriving too fast for a nervous system that was never given the tools to hold it. You have been taught your whole life that when someone cares about you, they show up more, they call more, they plan more, they lean in. So when a man goes quiet, every instinct in your body screams that he is losing interest. That instinct is wrong, and I want to explain exactly why. Attachment style is not a personality trait. It is a survival strategy that got built in childhood, usually before the age of 5, long before this man ever learned how to use words for what he was feeling. If he grew up in a home where emotional needs were met with criticism, or where closeness was followed by unpredictability, or where a parent physically loved him but was never emotionally present, his brain made a decision that most people never consciously notice. It decided that closeness equals danger. Not because closeness is bad, but because closeness, historically in his personal history, has been the exact moment right before pain. So now picture what happens when he meets you. You are warm, you are consistent. You make him feel something he has not felt in a long time, maybe ever. For the first few weeks, his nervous system does not know what hit him. He is showing up early. He is texting back fast. He is telling his friends about you without even planning to. This is the part where you fall for him hardest, because this version of him feels like the real thing. And it is the real thing. That is what makes what happens next so confusing, because somewhere between week 4 and week 8, sometimes sooner, something flips. He starts feeling too much. And when an avoidant man starts feeling too much, his body does not interpret it as excitement. It interprets it as threat. This is not a metaphor, this is measurable. Researchers who study attachment have found that when avoidantly attached people get close to a partner, their physiological stress response actually activates even while they consciously report wanting the relationship. His heart rate goes up, his cortisol goes up. His brain, the same brain that lit up with dopamine when he first met you, now floods with a different chemical story, one that says get out, get space, get safe. He is not choosing to pull away from you as a person. He is pulling away from the intensity of what you make him feel. And here is the part that will change how you see this whole situation. The intensity of the pullback is almost always proportional to the depth of what he felt right before it. Men who feel nothing do not need to create distance because there is nothing threatening to escape from. It is the ones who felt the most who run the hardest, because for them the feeling itself is the alarm bell. I want you to sit with that for a second. Read it again if you need to. The bigger the retreat, the bigger the feeling that triggered it. That is not me trying to comfort you with a nice story. That is the actual mechanism behind avoidant behavior, documented again and again in relationship research and in thousands of real cases, just like the one you are living through right now. So what does this look like in real life? It looks like a man who is texting you good morning every single day for 3 weeks, and then suddenly the texts get shorter, then they get slower, then a day goes by, then 2. You start replaying every conversation looking for the moment you said something wrong. You did not say anything wrong. You got close enough to matter. And mattering is exactly what his nervous system was never trained to hold on to without flinching. Here is where I need you to separate two things that feel identical from the outside but are completely different underneath. There is a man who pulls away because he was never that invested to begin with, who uses distance the way some people use a slow fade to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. And there is a man who pulls away because he is overwhelmed by how invested he actually is. From your side of the phone screen, both of these look exactly the same. Silence, delayed replies, sudden distance. But what is happening underneath is the opposite of each other. And confusing the two is where most women waste months or years of their life. So how do you tell the difference? This is the part everyone wants to know, so pay close attention. A man who was never invested pulls away smoothly. There is no internal conflict. He does not come back with intensity. He does not overcorrect. He simply fades, because fading costs him nothing. But a man who is avoidantly attached and falling harder than he can process does something very specific. He pulls away and then he comes back. Not because he planned it, but because the same nervous system that pushed him into distance eventually starts missing the exact thing it ran from. This is what people call the push and pull pattern, and it is one of the most reliable markers of a deactivated attachment system trying to fight its way back toward connection. You will notice it in small ways before the big ones. He goes quiet for 4 days and then sends a message that has nothing to do with reconnecting logistically. It is a random memory. It is a song that reminded him of something you said. It is a message at 11 at night that starts with, "Sorry, I have been distant." That message is not random. That message is his nervous system running out of the very avoidance it created, because avoidance was never actually solving the problem. It was only postponing the feeling. Here is something that will genuinely surprise you if you have never studied this. Avoidant people often report, in their own private reflection, that the moments after they pull away are some of the loneliest of their lives. They do not enjoy the distance. It is not a strategy they consciously choose because it feels good. It is closer to a reflex, the emotional equivalent of pulling your hand off a hot stove before your brain even finishes registering the pain. The relief is instant. The regret comes later, often much later, sometimes too late. This is why you will hear so many stories of avoidant men coming back months after a relationship ended, finally able to say the things they could never say while they were inside the relationship. Distance gave them the safety to finally feel what they could not feel up close. That is not romantic timing. That is architecture. That is how this attachment style is built. Now, I want to talk about what is actually happening on a deeper level, because understanding the mechanism is what is going to change how you respond to it. Avoidant attachment is fundamentally a conflict between two competing needs that exist inside the same person at the same time. One part of him wants closeness, genuinely wants it, craves it, even in the quiet moments when nobody is watching. The other part of him has been trained through years of early experience to associate that exact closeness with a loss of self, a loss of control, or a loss of safety. These two parts are not taking turns politely. They are in an active tug-of-war every single day, especially in the early to middle stages of a relationship that is starting to matter. When you understand this, the pulling away stops looking like rejection and starts looking like what it actually is, evidence of a battle. And you do not win a man out of that battle by matching his distance with more distance. And you do not win him by chasing so hard that you become the very intensity his nervous system is trying to escape. There is a third option, and it is the one almost nobody teaches. So let's talk about it. Before I go there, I want to pause and say something important, because I do not want you leaving this thinking that understanding his psychology means you owe him unlimited patience while he sorts himself out on your time. Understanding is not the same as tolerating mistreatment. If a man disappears for weeks with no explanation and reappears expecting you to pick up exactly where you left off with zero accountability, that is not deep avoidant wiring, that is a lack of respect. And those are two very different conversations. Everything I am telling you today applies to a man who is genuinely trying, in his clumsy, inconsistent way, not to a man who has made you an option while he keeps his life uninterrupted. You will know the difference by whether his actions, even the small ones, show effort in between the silences, or whether the silence is simply the whole relationship. Okay, with that said, let's talk about what actually works. Claire responded to the dog instead. She said something warm and light, without questioning where he had been or why he had disappeared. She did not pretend the silence had not affected her, but she also did not make the silence the first thing they had to discuss. She simply allowed the connection to breathe. 2 days later, he brought up the distance himself. He told her that sometimes he gets inside his own head and needs a little time to process everything, and he made it clear that his withdrawal was not about her. That moment is important because it shows the difference between giving someone space and abandoning your own standards. Claire did not chase him, but she also did not punish him. She remained warm without becoming desperate, and she allowed his next action to tell her what his intentions actually were. And that is the part I want you to remember. You do not have to solve the silence for someone else. You do not have to force an explanation before they are ready to communicate. But you also should not spend weeks or months making excuses for behavior that consistently leaves you confused and emotionally exhausted. Space can create room for someone to regulate themselves, but healthy space should eventually lead somewhere. If every period of distance ends with the same vague message, the same temporary warmth, and the same disappearance a few days later, then you are not watching progress. You are watching a cycle repeat itself. This is why you need to pay attention to what happens after the silence, not just what happens during it. Does he return with more openness? Does he make an effort to reconnect? Does he acknowledge that his withdrawal affected you? Does he slowly become more comfortable communicating when he needs space? Does the relationship become more stable over time? Those are the signs that matter. A single return does not prove emotional growth. A pattern of gradually improving behavior does. And if he comes back after several days and acts as though nothing happened, that does not automatically mean he does not care. But it does mean you are allowed to notice the pattern and decide whether it works for you. You can be compassionate about someone's emotional defenses without accepting a relationship that constantly keeps you uncertain. You can understand why someone pulls away and still say, "I need more consistency than this." Those two things can exist together. The healthiest response to an avoidant partner is not to become more avoidant yourself. It is also not to become increasingly anxious and chase every time the connection becomes uncertain. The healthier position is somewhere in the middle. You remain connected to your own life. You communicate your needs clearly. You allow another person reasonable space without turning that space into a permanent excuse. And most importantly, you watch whether their behavior moves toward you over time or keeps you permanently standing outside the door. Because there is a difference between someone who is afraid of intimacy and someone who simply does not want to participate in intimacy with you. Fear can improve when someone becomes aware of it and takes responsibility for changing it. Disinterest usually does not require a complicated explanation. It simply produces less effort, less curiosity, less emotional investment, and eventually less connection. The difficult part is that anxiety wants an answer immediately, while reality often reveals the answer through patterns over time. So when he becomes quiet, take a breath before you react. Do not immediately assume you have done something wrong. Do not create an entire story in your head based on a delayed message. Give yourself enough distance to observe what actually happens next. If he cares and is capable of building something with you, his behavior will eventually give you evidence. He will find his way back into the conversation. He will make an effort. He will show curiosity about your life. He will remember what matters to you. And as the relationship develops, he will hopefully become more willing to explain what happens inside him, instead of leaving you to interpret every silence. But if none of that happens, believe that information too. You should not have to become an expert in attachment psychology just to convince yourself that someone cares. You should not have to analyze every message, every story view, every sudden appearance, or every disappearance. You should not have to spend your days searching for hidden evidence of feelings that never become visible through action. The goal is not to become so skilled at understanding an avoidant man that you can tolerate anything he does. The goal is to understand the pattern well enough that you can stop taking his behavior personally while still protecting your own emotional needs. His fear may explain his distance, but an explanation is not automatically an excuse. His attachment style may help you understand his reactions, but it does not remove his responsibility to communicate, respect you, and participate in the relationship. So if you are currently sitting in silence wondering what went wrong, remember this. His withdrawal does not automatically mean you were not enough. It does not automatically mean the connection was fake, but it also does not automatically mean that he is secretly falling deeper in love. You do not have to choose either extreme. You can simply observe. Let his next actions give you information that your anxiety cannot give you. And if he comes back, you do not have to punish him for leaving, and you do not have to reward him by pretending nothing happened. You can welcome the connection while still holding your standards. You can say calmly, "I'm glad to hear from you. I hope you're doing okay." And when the timing is right, you can explain what you need from the relationship. You can tell him that you respect his need for space, but disappearing without communication is difficult for you, and that you would appreciate a simple message when he needs time. That is not pressure. That is healthy communication. Because ultimately, love should not require you to constantly choose between understanding someone else and protecting yourself. A healthy relationship creates room for both people. His nervous system matters, but so does yours. His fears matter, but so do your needs. His need for space matters, but your need for consistency matters too. And this is where Claire's story becomes more important than the dog photo itself. The real lesson was not that she knew exactly what he was feeling. She did not. The lesson was that she stopped trying to control the outcome. She responded to what was actually happening instead of reacting to the story her anxiety was creating. She gave him an opportunity to show her who he was through his actions, and then she paid attention. That is what you can do too. You do not need to chase the answer. You do not need to manufacture distance to make someone miss you. You do not need to become cold to prove that you have self-respect. You simply need to remain grounded enough to let someone's behavior reveal the truth over time. Because sometimes the silence really is fear, sometimes it is overwhelm, sometimes it is emotional avoidance, and sometimes, unfortunately, it is simply someone choosing not to continue. Your job is not to guess which one it is based on one quiet afternoon. Your job is to watch the pattern, protect your standards, and let consistent behavior give you the answer. And if the connection is real and both people are willing to grow, the silence should not remain the permanent language of the relationship. Eventually, there has to be more communication than guessing, more honesty than interpretation, and more action than hidden feelings. That is when you know the relationship is moving forward. Not because he finally stopped being afraid, but because he became willing to face that fear and still choose to show up. 2 days later, he brought it up himself unprompted and told her he sometimes gets in his own head and needs a minute, and that it was not about her. That sentence, "it was not about her," is one of the most common things avoidant partners say once they finally find safe enough footing to explain themselves. And it is almost always true, even when it does not feel true from where you are standing. I am not telling you this story so you go looking for a dog photo as proof of anything. I'm telling you this because the pattern is remarkably consistent across thousands of situations just like it. The silence is not the end of the story. It is the middle of it. The uncomfortable middle where his nervous system is trying to figure out whether closeness is safe. And your response during that middle determines more than almost anything else whether the story continues or quietly ends. I want to address something else here because I think it matters more than most people admit. There is a difference between an avoidant man who is falling in love and simply frightened by it, and an avoidant man who has learned that this exact pattern, pulling away and coming back with just enough warmth to keep you hoping, works as a way to keep you invested without ever having to fully commit. The second version is not fear. It is a strategy whether he is fully conscious of it or not, and it can look almost identical to the healthier version I have been describing. The difference shows up over time, not in any single moment. A man moving toward healing shows a widening pattern, meaning the gaps get shorter, the returns get warmer, and eventually he starts initiating the harder conversations himself. A man who is simply comfortable with the cycle shows a flat pattern, meaning the same dance repeats for months or years with no forward motion at all. No increased vulnerability, no attempt to name what is happening, just an endless loop that benefits him and slowly wears you down. If you have been watching this play out for 6 months or longer with zero forward motion, that is not a nervous system healing. That is a pattern you are simply funding with your patience. Now, I know some of you watching this are not just trying to understand a man you are currently dating. Some of you are trying to make sense of someone from your past, someone who went quiet years ago and you still think about, wondering if what I am describing applies to what happened between you. Here is what I will say to that. Time does not erase an attachment pattern. It just gives it room to run its full course. Many avoidant men who could not show up in the relationship come back later, sometimes far too late, finally able to articulate what they felt, but could never say while they were standing inside the fear of it. If that has happened to you, I am not telling you to wait for it, or build your life around the possibility of it. I am telling you that his silence back then was very likely never about your value. It was about a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do under pressure it did not know how to metabolize. I want to bring this back to you now because everything I have said so far has been about understanding him, and understanding him only matters if it changes how you show up for yourself. The biggest mistake I see over and over is women using this information to become more patient with disrespect, more tolerant of inconsistency, more willing to shrink their own needs in the name of understanding his psychology. That is not what any of this is for. Understanding avoidant attachment should make you calmer, not smaller. It should make you less reactive, not more accommodating of mistreatment. There is a version of this knowledge that empowers you and a version that traps you, and the difference is whether you are still honoring your own needs while you hold space for his process. So here is what I actually want you to take from this. If he has gone quiet, do not interpret that silence as proof you were not enough. Interpret it accurately as evidence that something in him is being triggered by how much this actually means. Hold your standards. Keep living your life. Do not perform coldness and do not perform chasing. Just remain someone who is warm when he shows up and unavailable to anxiety when he does not. That is not a manipulation tactic. That is simply what a secure, self-respecting presence looks like from the outside. And it happens to be the exact environment an avoidant nervous system needs in order to eventually stop running. Before we close this out, I want to ask you something because I want to know who is actually watching this and living it right now. In the comments, tell me how long the silence has lasted for you. Is it days? Is it weeks? Is it something older that you are still trying to make peace with? I read these and I want to understand the real situations behind the people watching this video, not just the theory. One more thing before you go. If this video described exactly what you are going through right now, do not just watch it and scroll away. Save it because you are going to want to come back to this the next time the silence starts and your anxiety tries to convince you that it means the opposite of what it actually means. And if you want more of this, real, honest breakdowns of what is actually happening inside an avoidant partner's mind, subscribe because this is exactly the kind of clarity I'm going to keep giving you video after video until you stop questioning your worth every time someone else's fear shows up disguised as distance. I want to leave you with one last distinction because I think it is the thing that will actually stay with you after this video ends. Fear and indifference can look identical from a distance, but they feel completely different up close if you know what to watch for. Indifference is quiet in a flat, empty way. There is no charge behind it, no tension, no small returns, no clumsy apologies, no vague talk of the future. Fear is quiet in a loaded way. It has weight to it. It comes with a pull back and a pull forward happening almost at the same time because the person is not actually at peace with the distance. They are just temporarily overwhelmed by what the opposite of distance would require of them. Learning to feel that difference, not just think about it, is what will save you months of confusion the next time someone you care about goes quiet on you. He is not gone. He is not indifferent. He is standing at the edge of something that terrifies him precisely because it matters. And the only question left is whether you will still be standing there whole and unshaken when he finally finds the courage to walk back through